Welcome into Other People's Shoes, the podcast where listeners get to step into the lives of others and see the world through their shoes. Your host, Neil Matthews, is a seasoned interviewer who has a natural talent for empathizing with his guests and drawing out their unique perspectives. Through a combination of storytelling and insightful questioning, Other People's Shoes explores the lives of a diverse range of guests, from everyday people to celebrities and thought leaders. With a warm and welcoming style, Neil creates a safe and supportive space for his guests to share their stories, while also challenging listeners to broaden their perspective and think more deeply about the world around them. So tune in to Other People's Shoes with Neil Matthews and get ready to step into other people's shoes.
Hey, come take a walk with me, not like you used to do. Do something different and put yourself in other people's shoes. Open up your mind and open up your eyes and change your direction, change your perspective.
Welcome into Other People's Shoes. I am your host, Neil Matthews. Thank you so much for joining me today. Season 14 is here. Let the unmasking begin. Now, listen, this is how my brain works and how my creativeness works at times, is it comes in all forms, shapes, and sizes. And this time, ironically enough, was not, as most are, in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. when I can't sleep. This was actually a play that I had gone to. And I thought to myself, interesting, acting, plays, Shakespeare. And I got to thinking, like, how many people in life have been wearing a mask? How many people have been hiding behind said mask for years and were afraid to come out of the mask? Now, I know for some of you, you're like, well, that's me. And some of you are still in the denial, like, I've never worn a mask. I don't know what you're talking about. So if that's not you, have never worn one, then you probably need to stop listening right now. But if you want to keep listening because you're curious about who's here today, well, stick around. Help me welcome her in from the Tar Heel States. Have to put that in there. My good friend Megan. Megan, how are you today?
I'm wonderful. Wolfpack Nation all the way.
And you had to put that in there too.
Always.
Of course.
Always.
So, Megan, we last heard from you.
Yep.
We were doing OCD stuff, and not that that's not still a thing, I think, on the plate and at the table, if you will. For you, when I talk about these masks and when I talk about this idea, I mean, what invokes you? What gets you thinking? What does that do for your, I think the word is synapses, the firing. What does that do for you?
Well, I've actually been thinking about this. Ironically, when you messaged me about coming on again, I was like, I've actually been thinking about this in terms of just lots of different arenas, whether it be my children. We've had some schooling decisions we've had to make. I think of it as we tend to put our identities in other things and they become our masks. We can start to think that certain aspects of our lives are the most important. And then there are these darker areas that we don't want other people to truly see. For somebody like me, I tend to not be able to hide myself, my feelings very well. But when it came to my anxiety and my OCD stuff, I got really good at hiding that part of my life. Now, I thought I was really good at it. There were people close to me who knew and I couldn't hide it from. To the outside world, I mean, a lot of people have read my book and been like, I had no idea that you were struggling with that. But I do think this idea of putting a mask on, like we all wear, the saying, like we all wear different hats. I think sometimes those hats become masks. Like we start to go, okay, well, in this arena, I'm this person. In this arena, I'm this person. It's just kind of a dangerous place to stay. I mean, in my life, I feel like my identity should be in my faith and in Christ. That gets to be really stressful when I'm trying to put on all these different masks all the time. So that's my first instinct, is to say, I think we all do it.
I love the idea of the hat. I've heard that too. We all wear different hats. Like I'm at work, I got my work hat. I'm at home now, I got my dad hat on. Okay, I'm at church, I got my youth group leader hat on, or my 4th and 5th grade teacher hat on. And when I'm by myself, I have a whole different hat on. But I like the mask idea. Casting Crowns, they have that stained glass masquerade. You ever heard that one? Oh, if you haven't, it's worth a listen.
Well, I'm going to have to now.
Yeah, it's all talking about the masks that people are wearing, truly. And I think that's what also spurred this idea, as I was probably listening to that at the time. I'm going to put myself on the table here, and this is where you can kind of obviously give me some thoughts on this, is counseling. So back in December, well, roughly even a little bit, I think it was around December, I started professional counseling.
Good for you.
And I've been going every Tuesday. It's really hard. Nobody tells you when you start going to counseling that it's going to be hard. First off, that needs to be the disclaimer somewhere. Maybe that's why nobody's going. I don't know.
Probably. You got to go places you don't necessarily want to go.
In this counseling, this guy says to me, he's like, listen, I think you have some attachment issues. And I was like, I don't like that. And he's like, why? You want to continue to, in his words, wear this mask. You want to continue to deny that this is really going on in your life? And I was like, well, I don't know. And he said, well, I'll give you an example. You're a Bible guy. I'll give you an example. I said, okay. He's like, you know the story of Mary and Martha? And I said, I do. And he said, are you going to continue to be a Martha, freaking out, fretting and scaring and running? Or are you going to be Mary and sit at his feet? I was like, well, as a dude, I don't want to be either one, but I get your point. But your thoughts on that? When you hear about things like that, anything invoked there at all?
Well, the first thing I would say is that counseling, it's that thing that you never want to have to go do. But then when you get there, you're like, I really need to be here. I tend to say, I don't have anything to talk about. But yes, counseling, I think, is a great place to identify those masks. You go in there and you're there to talk about the stuff you're trying to hide from other people. That's what you're there. Well, if you're there really doing the work, that's what you're there for. When I go to counseling, especially, I think there's this level of authenticity you have to get to. You have to be willing to talk about things and have someone else from the outside look in and go, okay, let me dissect this and help you understand yourself better. Then you have to figure out, okay, well, what's the mask that I'm wearing? For me, my mask, yours might be issue with attachment. For me, it was like, I'm trying to keep my image such that no one knows that I'm having these thoughts that I wish I wasn't having. I had to act like I had it all together. And I think from a societal standpoint, the American society, we don't want to be cracked and flawed. We struggle with that. Like, we don't show our flawed nature. We want to juggle everything. We want to do, we want to be, we want to have all these things. We want to have the house. We want to have the kids. We want to be able to do the job and be the wife and the mom. And I think from a female perspective, that's the other thing I would think of is like women have a very challenging job of being wife, mother. You feel criticized no matter what you do, whether you stay home with your kids or you work full time or you work part time, or they go to daycare or they go to public school or they go to private school. When you're with one mom who's maybe in more support of what you choose to do, you wear one mask, you talk one way. You talk to somebody who's homeschooling's the way to go. You put on a different mask of like, I feel insecure and now I have to protect my decision makings. This is where I think this idea of masks just kind of can grow. It's this discernment. It's like, how do you be your most authentic self and not wear a mask? Also use discernment with how much you share with certain people. It's a fine line. Kudos to you for going to counseling, because I'm a firm believer that every single person should go, because I just think it's good and I think it's helpful. That's just my soapbox there.
First off, I haven't actually ever publicly said that. So this is the first time.
Well, I'm honored that you chose me to be.
Well, that's what I'm saying. Like, I mean, I've said it in my circles, if you will, but I haven't announced it to the proverbial show friends and audience. Right. And in that, two things come to mind as you're talking about that. The first thing that comes to mind is during COVID, we all wore a physical mask,
literal.
At least, so literal, right?
Yes.
Not metaphorically,
Nope.
We did it. Like, I was cleaning my dresser drawer out and I found like 5 masks in there and I was like, man, I was throwing them in the trash. I was like, I'm done with you.
Yeah.
And I had this really cool mask that we wore at Disney World. It had Baby Yoda on it, Grogu, and he's holding a North Carolina NC. Yeah, that's truly happened. My wife found it on Amazon. And I got to tell you this, and then I'll finish my story. So we're in Aerosmith ride, the rock and roller coaster. I don't know if you've ever done that. It goes really fast. And so we sit down and my wife and I are doing single riders so we can ride it more times. And my daughter's like, that's the only ride she wanted to ride. So I think we rode it like 6 times in a row. It was crazy stupid. Like, I'm like, just like, can we get off the ride? Like, I'm not a roller coaster person. So anyway, so we're single riding. And so there's only 2 seats. You know, there's a pair of people. So me and another person. So I sit down and this gal looks over at me and she goes, nice mask. And I said, thank you. She said, I think it's pretty stupid, actually. And I looked at her and mind you, I'm wearing the Grey Goo or Go-Goo or whatever his name is, Baby Yoda, and he's holding the NC thing. And I look over at her and I said, why is it stupid? And I pulled it down and she said, well, that's also a stupid school. And I was like, well, let me guess. You go to Duke? And she goes, actually, I do. I graduate with honors in the fall. And I said, well, that was a stupid decision.
Oh my God.
And I said, can I get another partner? This lady's a satanic worshiper.
Oh.
And the people at Disney are looking at me like, what is going on right now? Anyway, I thought I'd share that with you.
Oh man, it's hostile. When when they move here, they have no clue how nasty it gets. It's really, that shocks me that someone said that.
I just thought I'd share that with you. She was so mad about it. And so anyway, yeah, she was very mean.
Let us be clear that you and I heckle each other because
it's in fun.
Because it's in
not
fun.
In anger.
There's really
not in anger. Yeah, she was mad. All right, so back to this. Like I was saying, with COVID, we were wearing masks all the time. We really got to hide behind those, I think, in a lot of respects.
Totally.
I think I heard that people were getting to the point where they were just so sick and tired of wearing a mask. And there was like this mask rebellion, almost like, I'm not going to wear it. I don't care what you say. I'm not going to wear it. At least out west it was.
Yeah.
For me, I think we had this kind of, not that long ago, this liberating moment where we freed ourselves from these masks. We burned them in effigy kind of thing. But yet we still stayed inside some of our masks and we never really removed them. I don't know what your thoughts are on that. To me, again, I think people have already come accustomed to releasing them and getting rid of them, and it felt good to get rid of them, but then some people still stayed there.
Well, yeah. And if you think about all the data that shows that little kids, and I mean this even from a metaphorical standpoint, if a little kid couldn't see the facial expressions of the adults around them, that they were actually missing out on a lot of what they needed to see and experience. And so from an emotional standpoint, if we wear masks to hide who we really are and what we're really struggling with, what are we denying those people, whether they're our children? Do we wear masks around our children? Do we try to seem like we got it all together? Do we repent to our children? Do we show them our sin nature? Are we doing the things that are necessary so that they can see who we really are? And I think if you've ever had a relationship with someone who I tend to be, and I've learned this recently, I'm the pursuer in relationship. If there's any sort of disgruntlement, I'm the one that goes to the person. I cannot stand there to be any sort of disjointed communication or anything. And some people don't receive that well. And if you have a relationship with someone who is a fleer, I learned this in counseling, sometimes you as the pursuer have to hold back. You have to say, okay, I'm going to let that person work it out or whatever. I've had an experience where that person is a big mask wearer and they let me in strategically. And when you experience that, where you're kind of all in, like, I'm going to be myself, and that person holds back, you kind of see what you're missing. And you realize that that's not God's design. God's design is for us to be in community, in biblical community and covenant community with each other, to bear each other's burdens. That's what we're to be doing. And if we're not, I mean, it sucks to ask for help. It sucks to say, look, I'm having a bad day and I need dinner. And obviously you don't want to abuse that. I've learned, especially with my kids, that they need to see me be vulnerable like that, because if they don't, they're not going to see the value of what Christ did on the cross. They're not going to see the value of what true repentance is and the freedom from that. And they're not going to see that we're all broken. There's nobody, not one. That's why, I mean, for me, this whole idea of a mask, it goes on into so many different facets of our lives. And the actual wearing masks over COVID, I think, was a true picture of how we use physical blocks like that and metaphorical ones to keep people out, because those physical masks were great for some people. I mean, they thought, this is fantastic. Nobody has to see my face. Nobody has to see my nasty looks. It took away a lot of that pressure where we all have to be authentic. And I just think it really shows our true colors as humans, that we're way too drawn to that, way too comfortable in that state. I'm getting fired up.
I think that's so powerful to say. And that's also why I was excited to have another opportunity to sit with you, is the idea, again, being a mom, being an author, I mean, there's so many facets to you and your story.
Yeah.
Being a wife, all these things. To me, I just wish we could get to a point, going back to this counseling thing. I don't know about you. I'm sure you could echo this. When you're in that room with the counselor, for those who've never been, first off, I agree they should go, but you find a good one. And it is hard to find a good one. I would echo that. But when you're there and you're in that moment, there's this level of trust that kind of happens. There's this level of vulnerability. There's this level of, like, I can let it go. I can really just relax. And I got to say, that seldom happens with people in real life. And I think, again, we put up these walls, we put up whatever, again, mask, it could be a mask, it could be anything. The thing that I really think, and maybe this is where we lead into, is I really think church was supposed to be that way. that place where you could come, and it was supposed to be a hospital and a haven and a place of refuge and an oasis in a sense to get filled up, to get recharged and rejuvenated. I mean, I haven't been to too many churches outside of my own, but I wonder as Christians, and I don't even like that word sometimes because it's been misused, but as a believer, as a disciple of Jesus, that's probably better phrasing. Do you think our churches are still lacking that in what you're seeing in your communities, in your areas, or are we doing a good job still?
Oh gosh, I don't know. I mean, I think as sinners, we're always going to fall short. And so, but that's an easy thing to fall back on, be like, well, we're sinners. But yeah, I mean, I think if you combine church with our society right now, that's gotten even more volatile against Christians. I think there's a lot of stigmas as far as how Christianity appears. Are we welcoming to the people who have sins that are taboo, so to speak? Are we making it a safe place? I don't know. I would hope so. When somebody calls me a hypocrite, I'm like, that's correct. That is exactly what I am. I don't do as I say, which is why I need Jesus. Do we have enough Christians saying that? Instead of saying, we have a lot of complacent, I think, Christians too, where it's like, I'm okay, you're okay. You know, what does God's word say? I mean, I think we're always going to fall short in that area. I would hope, and I think it's preached at my church, our community is a place for healing. It's not a place for mass judgment, but at the end of the day, we are sinners and we have to acknowledge that sin and confess it. So it's this combination. That's the good news of the gospel. We can sit in that yuck and muck of sin. Christ has already accomplished what he needed to. I mean, if you look around the world, these places that have very little, I mean, Christianity is booming. You come to America where we have everything. People would say, oh, we're a really Christian nation. I don't know. I question that. I go, well, I sure see a lot of kind of blatant hatred. It can be really daunting sometimes, especially as a mom who's sending her kids into the public school. And I tell my kids, be salt and light. Sometimes I wonder at what cost. Is this where we're supposed to be? I don't know. So that's the mask that I'm dealing with personally. If I could speak from that angle, is where am I called to be salt and light with my family? And it looks so different for different Christians. I would hope and pray that Christians are looking to be a place where people can take their masks off and will take them off themselves and set that example. And I think for me, writing my book was a major taking off of a mask, because I was saying, I'm a Christian. These are the thoughts that I had. They were scary. I didn't want to say them out loud, but here they are. I'm writing the sequel right now and I'm getting even more edgy. So we'll see where that goes. Yeah, I mean, I think there are those taboo sins too. They're the ones that, well, I don't do that.
You know, I'm sure you've heard this song, Barbie Girl. She's in the Barbie world,
girl.
Right? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
In the Barbie
I will
world.
not sing.
We can't play it due to copyright reasons. Life in Plastic.
It's fantastic.
It's fantastic.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, there you go. Little girls around the world
played
with Barbie and had this imagination and this lifestyle and the Barbie house and the Barbie car and the Barbie whatever. And this, I mean, Mattel, love them to death or hate them. They did great in marketing, pitching this idea of this veneer, this facade, this IKEA desk, it's fake, press board, whatever it may be.
Right.
That our world, as much as we try our very best to be authentic, try our very best to be real and I'm authentic and I'm real and I'm out there, we're still not.
No,
we're still not.
It's a formula, right? It's this I'm authentic, but I have to do these certain things to really be authentic. What? How does that work? Especially from a woman's standpoint. Don't get wrinkles. Use these creams.
This whole idea that, you know, you're a parent, I'm a parent. Like, what are we leaving our kids? What message are we truly leaving them if we continue to stay in the mask? If we continue to act like we have it all together, like everything's okay, you're okay, I'm okay, it's fine. I remember growing up, you know, my parents fought. They ended up getting a divorce, you know, when I was out of high school. But it was this whole idea, like we weren't allowed, like my mom was real specific. We don't talk about family problems with anyone. Everything's good. Everything's fine. You are to shut your mouth and not say a word about anything's happening. And me, you know, being the kid that just likes to talk and probably hear himself talk, I felt good and empowered that I had this information. I'm like, hey, so, you know, my mom and dad are fighting. Did you know that? Like my dad and mom, they really don't like each other. I didn't know. I didn't have that filter to say, no, that's probably not a safe place to say that.
Right.
Come to find out that I was probably seeking a safe place.
Right.
Petition people to hear my plea and are you safe? Let me test you. Can you handle this? But I want to go back to Casting Crowns, circle back to this.
Yes.
So this, again, if you haven't heard it, you please go listen to it right now. Casting Crowns, Stained Glass Masquerade. So here's a line from them. I'm going to do my best to interpret this. It says, so I tuck it all away like everything's okay. If I make them all believe, maybe I'll believe it too. So with a painted grin, I play the part again so everyone will see me the way that I see them.
Yeah.
The key to that, the way that I see them. What's the danger for you, do you feel like, if you weren't as vulnerable, weren't as, again, striving for authenticity? I'm going to say striving because you're not there yet, clearly.
Right. Oh, sure. No, I wish. This side of heaven, I don't think it's going to happen.
If you didn't allow your kids, the people in your circle, your husband, whomever, we can, scratch in that name wherever you want. If you wouldn't allow them to see you for who you really are, what's the danger if you would have continued to just put that wall, that mask, that whatever?
Oh, well, then whoever really gets to know who you are, how can you even be representative of how God's work? Because when we put a mask on, we try to act like we have it together. We're denying the beauty of sanctification. We're denying showing people what it looks like to actually be changed. God is working. He is taking those hard things. So if we're not actively participating in that by sharing that with other people, but when I listen to those lyrics, I think about my 13-year-old who's in middle school. And let's just be real, like middle school is hard. You've got the roles everybody plays. You've got I'm the sports kid, I'm this kid. And my son has had some real challenges in middle school, like some real hard challenges. And we've told him, like, you're a toothpaste tube and everybody is. And when you get squeezed, what comes out? That's what you're looking for. And I think middle school and high school is a great chance and opportunity for us as parents to show our kids, unveil ourselves, and to really show them, set an example for them of this is what's important and this is what's not. And I think everybody's looking around. I mean, we can try to say, oh, middle schoolers, they're comparing themselves. Well, guess what? We do it too. Well into adulthood, we compare ourselves to other people, what they have, what they do, their marriages. That's another place we wear a mask, is with our marital issues. I've had friends come to me and be like, okay, we've been going to marital counseling. I'm like, great. That's wonderful. And they're like, oh, what? That's a good thing? It's like, yes, like that's a tool. Why do we shy away from needing help in those areas? And not that counselors are perfect or fix everything. We should be in the Word. We should be with other believers. First and foremost, there are professionals who have skills that God's provided that we should utilize. I think that song really, we all feel that way. We all walk into certain situations and go, man, I just don't belong here, especially as Christians in a lot of not Christian environments. Do we put a mask on? Do people know we're different? That's another question, right? Do we just kind of absorb into the world, or do we stand with our faith? That's a tough one.
Well, it is definitely a hard one to execute. First off, middle school sucks.
Oh.
High school's not any better, by the way. We have a high school sophomore now.
You do? Oh, man.
Yeah. And she's going to be driving in June.
She's the same age as my nephew. I'm telling you, that's the thing. Like, you just go, okay, well, I hope high school's better. You want to be optimistic for them. Come on.
Yeah, but think about it for you. I mean, think about middle school for you. I mean, was middle school rough, or was high school more rough?
I loved middle and high school. I really did.
Okay. So here's the better question. Were you more authentic?
Oh,
were you more
I wasn't authentic
in middle
in
school
either
or
one.
high school? Okay.
School for me was a distraction from my own brain. That's probably why I liked it so much, because it was like, I don't have to sit in these stupid thoughts. I can go to school and be with people. I mean, I'm also such a severe extrovert. I think it just worked for me. I think God blessed me in that way. I wasn't my true self until motherhood. I mean, obviously still working on that from an authenticity, like, hey, this is who I am. Here's the irony. I wrote a book. I still, when people ask me, what do you do? I say I'm a stay-at-home mom. And my sister's like, you need to say I'm an author. Like, why don't you say that? I'm like, because it sounds self-promoting or braggy or whatever. And so why do I put that limit on it either? What is it about that I feel like I have to hide? It's weird. It can happen in so many different forms.
Okay, I gotta pick on that one. Why don't you tell people you're
It feels
an author?
weird, because then they're like, oh my gosh, what did you write?
I wrote this amazing book called Loving Naomi.
Yes,
you should read it.
That just feels icky to me. And I have really, I've been listening to this podcast called The Business of Christian Fiction. And she talks to Christian authors about marketing and why is it hard for us to promote these things. And I honestly, I would say that it's a humility thing, but it's probably not. It's probably more of, I don't like the way it just feels yucky to say it. Why is it hard? I don't know. Like, that's another, when you asked me to think about masks, I was like, why do I hide that part of my journey? And why do I shy away from that? And I don't have an answer for you yet. Not a good one anyway.
I start working at this job. It's a body shop. So a lot of guys are listening to music and they got their headphones in. And a couple of times I've noticed that some of them are listening to podcasts. And so one of the guys in particular was listening to one day and I say, hey man, what do you listen to? He's like, oh man, podcasts all day long. I can't get enough of them. And I said, oh really? I said, you always looking for new ones, recommendations, whatever. And he goes, oh yeah, man. Yeah, you got one? Is there one you're listening to really well? I go, oh man, I love this one. The host, let me tell you, the host is a little nutty. Host is a little quirky. The host, I think, is obsessed with North Carolina because every episode seems to like feature that or talk about that or whatever. And he goes, okay, seems kind of weird. And he goes, what's it called? I'll look it up. And I said, okay. So he gets out his phone and I said,
You did not play like you did.
I swear to you, this to you. This is truth. Other people's shoes, I think. Something about shoes. Try that. Try other people's shoes. With apostrophe S, I think, on the people's, because they own the shoes. And he goes, he's looking it up and he looks at it and he goes, huh, seems kind of faith-based. I don't know about that. I'm like, yeah, I think it is a little, faith-based maybe. And he goes, huh. And he looks at it and he goes, wait a minute. He goes, is this you? I go, oh yeah, that's me. He's like, you have a podcast? That's so cool.
That's amazing.
What I'm saying is that I kind of wear it as a badge of honor. And a little bit of braggadocious. But at the same time, to me, I try to say, hey, on this, you get to really see me. Like if you want to see me in my true, real element, like work element, again, going back to that, like I do have to have kind of that work mask, if you will, professional, try to be. But in that, I've had people listen, they're like, man, you sound way different than you do at work, buddy. And I was like, well, that's because that's me. What you're getting right now, this is Neil.
Yeah.
I think you got to embrace that.
And I think we also have to embrace it. And maybe my fear of saying I'm an author is because I'm afraid that it's going to be my identity. Because it's an idol for me. I want to be a successful writer. I want to do all of those things. And I'm afraid that if I identify with that maybe I'm going to deny that it's going to become more of an idol for me than it should. That's my noble explanation a little bit. I don't know that that's really where it comes from. I think that could be a start. And I think as we talk about these masks, I think it can be easy to be like, oh, well, what is it exactly that we should be thinking of all of these things? Because we are all of these things. We are dads, we're moms, we're workers, we're teachers, whatever. And I think we just need to, if we put our identity in Christ first, like a child of God, then I think we can deal with the masks and we deal with the roles and we can put them in their proper place. And instead of those tasks that we do becoming masks, they become instruments of how God and gift opportunities for God to use our gifts. So it's like how we think about it. It's like, how do we view these things? And I've learned I can't help bring a version of myself that's authentic now. It's a fault of mine in some ways. Our greatest gifts are our greatest weaknesses. Like sometimes people are like, you're a lot. Like you're a lot. I mean, let me just get real, like right here in the first 5 minutes. I've tried to hone that and hopefully be a more authentic version of myself. And we should be clear that not wearing a mask does not mean you have to be an extrovert. That's not what we're saying. It doesn't mean you have to go and like overshare. I think it's how we carry ourselves. It's where we put our security.
If we're using Mary and Martha as this example, Martha's freaking out. Mary's just chilling at Jesus's feet, just waiting. But she also knows that it's a safe place with Jesus. She knows that. And I think that's the key to what you're saying is that's the struggle. If I'm reading the room, to say you're an author, to say you're this, you almost feel like you're like, well, let me covertly tell you about me without telling me about you, if that makes sense. Listen, I think there's power in what you're saying. And I think there's power in saying, when you get to know them more than just the 3-minute introduction. Hey, I'm Megan. By the way, I'm an author. Would you like to know about my book and 5 places you can buy it from? Maybe not that.
you can Venmo me now.
I'll throw in a free bookmark and a highlighter. Make it a light blue highlighter, just saying.
Never.
They don't make red highlighters.
I know. They all come out pink.
Once you get to know somebody, once you sat at their feet and they've sat at your feet, you gotten to know them on a deeper level. I think that's when you maybe bring that up. But me out of the gate, I'm like, hey, I'm a podcaster.
But you do it in a way that's, I think that you're using your gifts. You've got this sense of humor. You've got this bubbliness about you that makes it come across as anything other than just a genuine, like, hey, I think you'd enjoy this.
It doesn't come across as schmarmy.
I wouldn't think so.
Like schmarmy is like salesy, like a used car salesman. Like, hey, if you act now.
No. And the other thing too, I think, is that do we care enough about, because both of what we represent, right? We both want to represent our faith in Christ well. So if we don't care about the message, who's going to know to? It's the same thing with just being a Christian in our daily walk. Do we care enough and want to share enough. It's uncomfortable to do that, to bring Jesus into conversations. It's what we should be doing because God loved us and he loves other people. And we want to tell them about it. We care about it, right? You care about your podcast. I care about my book. We care about Jesus. Like we want that to be our mantra.
I will say, and she's going to punch me when she hears this, or pinch me maybe even, and she might even punch me. So I made a lot of t-shirts, podcast t-shirts. I'm not wearing one currently because I knew we were going to be sitting together.
No, I don't want
this
that.
This is my Tar Heel shirt on today. But speaking of that, like I've made a few. I came home one night. I don't know where I was from, church or whatever. I came home one night and my wife is wearing like one of my podcast t-shirts. And I was like, oh, you have never looked prettier.
That's so sweet.
Well, let's wrap this up. I have revamped Senseless. We have new questions because it's a new season, and I committed to Garrett that every new season we're going to come up with new questions. Season 14, Senseless questions. They're fun. Still don't have a North Carolina State cup. Sorry. You should.
You'll never use it. You'll probably just...
I'll put it next to the USC jersey. See, I have a different school. You know, I got a USC jersey up there. Okay, all right.
Too much blue.
All right, here we go.
Yeah.
Which means nothing to you except this. 4 people you would love to meet.
Dead or alive? Oh.
Doesn't matter. Yep, 4 people you want to meet.
Without a doubt, Flannery O'Connor. Yes.
Okay, I don't know who that is.
Okay, Flannery O'Connor is a Southern author. If you have not read her, she's amazing. She died at 39.
Okay.
She's from Georgia.
All right.
She wrote Wise Blood. All of her stuff has got beautiful imagery, but it's kind of grotesque. She wrote A Good Man is Hard to Find. That's a good one. That's your homework. You got to read that. Okay, so Flannery O'Connor, Thomas Sowell. He's a economist. Did a lot of great work. I would love to meet him. He is like a genius. Jimmy Fallon. I would love to meet him. He just is. I mean, my dream was to be on SNL, and I would just absolutely love to meet him. And then let's see, number 4. Why is this one tough? Like, there's so many people. Honestly, my knee jerk was to say Jesus first. I feel that's just assumed. That's a freebie. I can just say I would love to meet Jesus. I really would like to meet Jesus's mother, Mary. That's my 4th. I would just really love to pick her brain. Gosh, that's a hard question.
Fallon, I know. I'm making them harder.
That's a really hard question.
Well, Megan, I want to give you an opportunity because you talked about the new book. How close are we to seeing the new book when we talk about that?
I'm at about halfway with it. It's flowing really good. It's just, having kids and being mom, it's hard to write it all out. I would say maybe in the next year is the goal. I've set myself the goal of May to be finished with the first draft. I've got to figure out publishing. If anyone listening is a publisher that's interested in another book about OCD, dude, like I'm there for it. I may self-publish this one again. It seems like that's the trend. More success for authors these days. Follow me on Instagram, Meghan Newkirk Writes, and I'll have updates there and such. If you're in the Raleigh area, I actually have a local author nook at a local antique store where I sell local author books among other really cool old things, and my book, which has been super fun to see who buys them. And I actually had a customer come in who bought my book, whose daughter had OCD, and her name was Naomi. The mom was like, this is the coolest thing ever. Cool things like that happening. My blog, I try to keep up with it as much as possible.
I still think you need a podcast.
You think so?
As if you don't have enough going.
Well, that's the thing. Like a podcast, I love being on a podcast. When you asked me, I was over the moon excited. It's my most favorite thing. I mean, I will say you've been one of my favorite to interact with. I think we just have a very easy flow.
Yeah, we do. We do. Mm-hmm.
Which if you ever need a co-host, I'm here for it. I told you that. You make me think, and I appreciate that. So yeah, and you can go to my website, Meghan Newkirk Writes with an H, Meghan Newkirkwrites.com.
Meghan, because she's handwriting.
And I'm hoping to have a link for my book on my website here pretty soon. I've been relying way too much on Amazon and need to get a little bit more thrifty with that.
Well, Megan, thanks so much for coming on. Thanks for being a gem today as always.
Thank you for having me.
Well, guys and gals, kids and campers alike, that's it. That's all. That's our show today. I know, a little different than normal. Maybe we're changing things up a little bit. We've been doing this a little while now. We kind of can change the format a little bit. I know we didn't ask the shoe question. I get it. People will blow me up on Twitter. I get it. But let's get serious here for a quick sec, shall we? I want you to do me a favor when you are done listening. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I don't care if you're folding laundry or you're on the run or you're putting the kids to bed or whatever you're doing, do me a favor right now. Maybe even while you're listening, go into the bathroom. I know, it seems weird. Shut the door, turn the light on, and do me a favor and just look in the mirror. What do you see? What is it about you that you feel like has stopped people from coming to you? What is that? You don't have to tell me. Just maybe say it to yourself right now. So here's my question. Is that thing, whatever it is that still stopping you from being real, being authentic, being who you truly are? Because if it is, maybe today is Liberation Day, Mask Freeing Day. Weird Al back in the day had a weird song. It was called Weasel Stomping Day. I don't know. It's a weird song. It made me think of that. But maybe today's the day you stomp on the mask and say, no more. I'm done with you, and I'm done with this mask, and I'm ready to be real. Just a thought for you. If you do that, if you take part in this silly experiment, let me know. I'd love to hear you. OPSpodcast.com is a great place to let me know. You can also let us know on our social medias at OPS Podcast Show. A little different than the website, but still kind of gets to the same place. And don't ever forget this. Remember, when you walk in other people's shoes, you really do get a different perspective on life. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned till next week when we walk in other people's shoes.